Hey guys, it's Audra and welcome back to 365 Projects. I know it's almost the middle of March, but we're going to go back in time and do my February wrap up. Yeah, obviously a little bit behind schedule. And normally when I do these videos, I also do my TBR jars as well, but I am taking a break from that in the month of March because I need to catch up, but more importantly because I am doing Emoji-thon and middle grade March smooshed together, and all my books for the month of March are going to be middle grade, except one from a book club. So taking a break from that, and yeah, we'll catch up with that in the next one, which will be the end of March for April type of deal. So without further ado, let's just get started on what I read last month. So as always, we are going to go from my least favorite to my most favorite, and we are going to start with my 3-star books. There were 3 of them, and I only read 6 books this month. So it wasn't a really strong month, but I did get quite a bit of reading done, so at least they were big chunky books. So the first one would be, finally, Jodi Picoult's Second Glance. This was from my reread for January. This one is one that goes back and forth between history and present day, which I love. It starts out in present day with a man who wants to basically commit suicide because his love has been lost, and he just can't fathom being here and not with her on the other side. But he's also a ghost hunter. So there's a lot of ghosts and paranormal stuff going on, as well as the relationship with his nephew, who is allergic to the sun and can only be out at night type of thing. So that's the present day story. The history part of the story is about 1930s when our country was doing eugenics in the East Coast. So basically, they would sterilize people in asylums and jails to get out of prison early, and the feeble-minded and gypsies, or Native Americans back then. And it's basically how the 2 times in history are connected. I wanted to reread this because this was the first time I read it a long time ago that I had ever heard of eugenics. It's something that we are not taught, but Hitler actually based all of his final solution stuff on our eugenics in the United States, which is not talked about. So basically, it was a lot more ghost and paranormal than I realized or remembered, and it just wasn't as great as the first time around, I guess, since I was already educated on the background. But yeah, so I gave it a 3 stars. It's still a great book if you want to read it, but it just didn't live up to the hype that I remembered it for. My second 3-star book goes to The 57 Bus. I finally finished this one. This is a nonfiction YA book about 2 teenagers whose lives are changed by one stupid decision on the 57 bus. It starts with Sasha, and you kind of get the back and forth between her and I believe Richard is his name. But Sasha's part of the story is that Sasha is non-gender conforming, and they are on a bus, and Richard is kind of told by his friends to set their skirt on fire. And obviously, it's very horrific, and it's the court case behind all of that and their backgrounds on both of their lives. It is a good book, and it was very informing for me. I have never read a book with a gender non-conforming person, so it took me a little while to get used to the they, them, their pronouns. So it did really educate me on that, as well as other sexualities or identities that I have not read about before. I know about them and how pronouns are used, but it was different to read it and try to cement it in my brain on how it was working. And so I really appreciated it for that. So the 3-star just comes from the fact that it ended all of a sudden. It was the court case was over and there wasn't a whole lot of afterthought because this is a very recent event. And so I would be interested to see if there'd be a follow-up portion, maybe in 10 years or something. But I do think that this would be a book for teenagers who are wanting to read about people like them, about decisions that they make that could affect their future. But it was just a middle-of-the-lane book for me. My last 3-star book goes to a book that is raved about here on BookTube. So my opinion is not the popular opinion, and I'm kind of nervous to say that. But anyways, it is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre. This book is about Deanna Madden, and it's the first in a series, which obviously I probably won't be reading any more of, but she is a cam girl, and she also has murderous tendencies, and so she has locked herself in her apartment for 2.5 years, has not been out once, and She does cam girl things, which is on the graphic side as you're reading. But basically, she realizes that one of the men she communicates with, and I say communicate with lightly, I guess, is going to do something very, very bad. And so she decides whether or not it's worth it to release herself from this prison she has put herself in and try to go and save the day. I feel like if the cam girl portion of the book was not so graphic, people would not be loving it as much. And so that kind of took away from my experience just because it was just, not that it was too much for me, but it was, I don't know, it just wasn't my thing, I guess. And I would have loved more of like the mystery and the thriller part of it and less of her playing with herself is the simplest way I can put it since I try to keep things clean here on this channel. So this is middle of the road book for me, and yeah, let's just move on. Moving on to higher star ratings, there were no 5-star books, but there was 1 4-star and 2 4.5-star. So I didn't have any favorites, but they were pretty close. There were a few things that I had some issues with, I guess, in the stories. So the next one is a 4-star book for Detangled Mercy. And this was the book club pick that we had for my book club here in town. This is another one that goes back and forth between present day and history about a woman who is a professor who has lost her mother, who is grieving, and she's also setting a slave revolt of 1822. And so she gets deep into that and trying to figure out if a slave named Tom Russell made it through the slave revolt. And so it goes back and forth between present day, well, I think it was like 2002 or something. So kind of present day, and then also 1822 with Tom Russell and the characters surrounding him. So I enjoyed the book as a whole, but the middle part just dragged. I felt like it was like 2 bookends with fluff in the middle that could have been deleted because it was almost a 500-page book. But I really did love how the characters ended up being connected. As we know, it's my favorite thing. But it was just a 4-star read for me, and I would recommend it if you want to read more about the slave revolt or just a historical fiction present-day mashup. My first 4.5-star read goes to Betty Before X. Now, looking at the title, I should have realized a long time before I got to the end of it that this is the story of the wife of Malcolm X when she was a young girl. And it's written by their daughter with Renee Watson, which her book Piecing Me Together was my favorite. So this is definitely an own voices, like through and through book that I think everybody should read. It was a different perspective that I have seen before through a kid's eyes. I don't know that I've read any adult, but basically about this girl and her mother that didn't want her and her earning for a family when family was not given to her as she deserved. So it was beautiful in that regard of a young child working through what love from a parent should look like. And then when you get to the end and you realize that it was Malcolm X's wife's story of her childhood, like it just brought everything together and it was almost perfect. I gave it a 4.5 because if it wouldn't have had that connection, it wouldn't have been as great, I guess. So it wasn't a perfect book by any means, but it explored some topics that I have not seen explored in middle grade before. And I think a lot of kids, like I'm thinking of my foster care kids specifically, or just kids that are not loved as much as we think they should be loved at home, could appreciate this girl's story. And my last book for the month is Final Girls by Riley Sager. This one is an interesting thriller about 3 final girls. A final girl is a girl that is left over after a massacre. She's a survivor of the group, and this is the story of 3 of those girls and how they become to live after this tragic, horrendous, altering event takes place. And it follows, Quincy. Quincy is the main character, and she has kind of figured out how to live a normal life in her mind until the final girl before her appears to have committed suicide. And so the third final girl, Samantha, I think is her name, comes to find her, and things aren't what they seem. So it was one of those thrillers that I couldn't like put together along the way, and for good reasons. And it kept me wowed, but then it also disgusted me. Um, so basically, the reason I gave it a 4.5 star was the half star was for the parts where I was just disgusted with, in the fact that throughout the book, she knows good and well that two of these people are people that she should not have any sort of um, physical relation with, and she does it anyways. And my skin was crawling, my blood was boiling, and I was so mad at her that like I almost didn't want to finish the book, but I finished it anyways. And it's a shocker, definitely. I will give it that. And it kept me like reading it quickly. I also read this in the plane, which I'm terrified of planes. So I read quite a bit of it in the air, so that didn't help the situation. But it's a great read if you are okay with getting upset with the main character that you're supposed to root for. So those are all the books that I read in the month of February, and even though I only read 6 books, I still feel like it was a successful reading month. I did reach my like 2,000 pages mark, which is sometimes all I can do, and it's very rare that I get 3,000, so I'm happy with that. And I cannot wait to share the books that I have read so far in March and what I plan to read the rest of the month with you here in another few weeks, because like I said, it's the middle of March. But anyways, please let me know what you have read recently down below, and I will talk to you in the comments. If you like this video and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.